Okay, and Olivia. Welcome, Olivia.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So thank you for joining Alicia and myself. My name is Tanya Schumann. I am the lead facilitator and trainer here at Resources Unlimited. Alicia is she is one of my best friends and my colleagues. She's graciously decided to be my producer for this, even though she's moved over into a marketing role. But some of you may have worked with Alicia. Some of you guys may have worked with me, but welcome. Today, we're going to talk about how to effectively communicate change management using the DISC assessment. How many of your organizations within the last 4, 5, 6 years have been through some type of change management? Anybody? Okay. Looks like Latoya, Carrie, Olivia. Can I ask, not specifics, but do you feel that it was successful? Do you feel that there were some things that could have been done better? And if you want to do it in the chat, if you want to put those answers in the chat, that would be great. Okay. I'm sure it could have been done better. Absolutely. Do you feel that one of the elements that could have been done better, was it based or was it founded on communication? Or were there other elements with this change management? Yes? Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Do you guys currently use a DISC program or some type of communication program within your organization now? Okay. Yes, yes. Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So Carrie, you use it within the leadership development. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing. Let's see if I can get my slide deck to work. Technology is grand when it actually works. Okay. So what we're going to spend the next probably 45, 50 minutes discussing is truly what is change management. How can using a tool such as DISC help, and then answer any questions that you have. I've got some really interesting statistics. You guys may or may not have read these in some articles that you may have received. But introduction, sorry about that. My name's Tanya again, Alicia. Let's see, okay. What is change management? In your words, what do you feel that change management is? And what is the meaning within your organization, right? Because definitions matter. But in a few words, what do you guys feel, what's the definition of change management? Yeah. Ensuring everyone's on the same page. Absolutely. Support people through change. Yes. All right. The definition, layman's definition that I found is exactly what you guys just said. It's a systematic approach that deals with a transition or transformation. And then the purpose of it is to implement strategies for affecting and controlling change and helping people adapt to that change. When we think about change management, communication plays such a huge role in that. And especially since everybody is familiar with DISC, each of us we receive that information and we internalize that information much different than our counterparts, or a lot of times differently than our counterparts. So when it comes to change, trying to understand who change, or when we're dealing with change, what styles may embrace those changes a little bit easier than others, and how can we collectively kind of bring everybody along with us in terms of change. Change is never easy. I don't care what style you are, but as we all know that there are some styles that will accept that change and embrace that change much quicker than other styles. Okay. There are two types of organizational change, adaptive and transformational. Adaptive changes, they're small, they're incremental. These will evolve over time. Those I feel that are, it's a little bit easier in terms of organizational change, versus the other one, which is transformational change, which this is the big change. This is larger in scale and scope. These are changes that implement from the top down, the entire organization or entire departments, okay, where there's a shift in mission, shift in strategy, shift in processes. With what you guys know with DISC, what styles do we feel may, especially when we're talking about transformational changes, which styles may have the most difficult time working through those changes? CNS, right. Absolutely. Yep. And even our leaders, we all know leaders have different styles, those C's and S's. They will initiate change. They may initiate it so much differently than their counterparts, the D's and I's. And understanding that and how do we communicate effectively down the chain of command becomes very, very important. Okay. The success and failure rates of change initiatives, not all changes are a success. Want to share a few statistics here with you. 70% of change initiatives fail. So when we think about change within your organizations, would you agree or disagree with that? When you think about change initiatives and the success and the failure rate, when you guys implement changes, what do you feel your success or failure rate is? I know with resources, because I think I'm an SI, but most of my colleagues are in that CS range. So when we do change, a lot of times it's a slower change. There's a lot of questions, a lot of conversations. I would say success rate is probably 50% when I think about 60, or when I think about the big changes that we've implemented. And I do, when I say initiatives fail, from my perspective, it's failure maybe to begin with. So you've got this change, this is what needs to be done. It's always evolving. So, how do you work through that evolvement? So, all right. Okay, so thank you, Carrie, for sharing that. There are many stops, many discussions before it's fully deployed. The CEB Corporate Leadership Council, only a third of major change initiatives fully meet the goals set. I found that very, very interesting. But major change initiatives, and the question that I have with this one is the set goal versus what it ended up being. So I think, again, it continues to evolve. And we'll get into some more statistics here in just a second. This one I felt was very, very important. 50% of leaders don't know whether recent organizational changes have succeeded. When we talk about change management, why do you think that might be? That 50% of leaders don't know whether recent organizational changes have succeeded. Do you feel that it might be a breakdown somewhere in communication? And change management, there are so many levers that are a part of change management. But which of those levers can we help, or what tools can we give our leaders in our management to help pull those levers in the right way? They don't understand the goals. A lot of times, though, leaders are setting those goals. So there's so many different questions around that. Is it that they're not communicating the goals down effectively? Latoya, absolutely. Leadership never seems to think there is a problem, and especially in bigger organizations where leadership is removed from some of the day-to-day operations. communication is definitely key. And again, when we talk about leaders and the different styles, I think sometimes they feel like it might be successful, but they're not asking the right questions from the right people, right? Okay. So what is the role of leadership? Here's some statistics on leadership and the ownership in change planning. 60% of organizations use implementation plans that are primarily owned by their leaders. So again, when you think about 62% are created and owned by the leaders, but 50% of them don't know if they were successful. There's a huge disconnect there. 74% of leaders say they involved employees in creating a change strategy, but only 40% of those employees feel included. So again, there's a huge gap there. And yes, we've involved our downlines, but the downlines are saying, I don't think so. Okay. 23% of employees feel excluded from change-related decisions. But yet change success increased by 24% when employees primarily owned that implementation planning, okay? So I think when we talk about some of these statistics, there is a lot of information that you can pull out from this. And how do we create an organization that does change management more successfully? Let's explore the communication dynamics. Here's some statistics around change communication. And ladies, I apologize. I am not sure why I'm tripping over my words. So thank you for staying with me. I found this really, really interesting. 70% of supervisors they were preferred senders of personal impact messages, where supervisors, the ones that work with their direct lines, every day, they're sending personal messages. Hey, this is happening. While business leaders, the big leaders, executive managers, CEOs, they send out organizational messages. Within your organizations, how do those messages land? When you get a full organizational message, does it cause a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of, okay, great, what are they doing now? Type of feeling through ripple effect through the organization? I know when we're implementing change here at Resources, a lot of times we're doing it personally, where it becomes, we start with smaller groups and then kind of work our way out. Okay. All right. Okay, there is no communication. So LaToya, if you're not getting communicated, then when you have changes, is it just from, do they just naturally happen, or is it more your supervisor, your direct supervisor saying, hey, this is what's happening?
I'll go ahead and unmute for that question.
Oh yeah, thank you.
So I feel like we're going through a lot of change right now, and I feel like we were initially communicated one thing, and then it ended up changing like 1,000 different times, but the leadership wasn't communicating when there were changes happening. So we were kind of hearing communication word of mouth. We were hearing it other different type of ways, but not through the appropriate channel. And that is something that we are trying to work through, making sure that leadership knows that they need to send out regular communication, because that's not happening.
Right. And when we think about the different disc styles and how they process information, what disc style do you think is going to impact all of them? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But which ones do you feel, when we're talking about using disc and change management, will it impact more deeply?
I think C and S. C definitely, because they need more time to process. Mm-hmm. So if they're not getting that information on a regular basis, they don't have time to process the change.
Correct. Yep. And then on the S is similar, but more of, how's this going to affect my team? How's this going to affect morale? Yeah, absolutely. And I think when change is being communicated, do you feel that they're encompassing all of those different styles? So, and I know what you're saying, that, it's not being communicated, but when it is there intention on the leadership part or whomever's communicating the change? We've got to make sure that we're including each of those styles, because different styles are going to need a little bit different information.
For my area, my organization is a university. So there's probably no way to encompass all the different styles. Not everyone in the university has taken this so far. We are trying to
Okay.
change that.
Yep.
But I do not think this leadership style, which is part of HR,
Mhm.
has gone through this. And I don't think that they are.
Okay.
Um, but I have, tried to make them knowledgeable of the different styles. And when we're having conversation, kind of stop and say, this person needs more time to process this, this not person, an actual person, but you need to look at different areas. I think sometimes leadership gets a little focused on their role.
Mhm.
So and it's weird because the leadership I'm talking about are both I and D styles. So it's a little strange how the communication happens because of those two styles.
Yes. And team wise, is there a pretty good mix of styles, or do you have your leaders are I's and D's, and then the team is made up of C's and S's
There's a
primarily?
little bit of mixture.
Okay. Okay. And not saying that it can't be done well, but I's and D's promoting change without um understanding or without taking into consideration all of those styles. I mean, when my I style takes over, you've got big, bold ideas and you love them. And you're just like, what do you mean? Why can't you're not embracing this? This is going to be so great. So just ask Alicia, who is, she's a little bit of an opposite style of me. And, when her eyes go wide, it's like, that's my indication. Like, okay, I'm going a little bit too fast and maybe not too bold, but not giving her time to process everything. So I do find that actually absolutely happens. 29% of employees said change wasn't communicated clearly, and we just had a great conversation regarding that. And a lot of times I think leaders feel like they're communicating that change clearly. This is what needs to be done, and this is how we're going to get there, and this is the time frame in which I want us to get there. Depending on the style and how you internalize all of that information, I can see why 29% of employees said change wasn't communicated clearly. And a lot of times I think that you can decrease that number by just giving a forum of saying, okay, let me field your questions. What questions do you have? Let's talk about this, giving a little bit of space to talk through that change for certain folks, certain styles. Okay. And 28% of employees said they didn't receive the necessary information to understand change. So these are two really big percentages in terms of communication dynamics. And these are things that with the right tools, you can overcome those and you can lower those percentages. Okay. So can DISC itself help? Absolutely. For those of you that use DISC, you know the power of DISC. I love hearing that while not everybody's taken a DISC in the organization, there's steps to hopefully give them this wonderful tool. The thing that we want to remember is that one's DISC style, it's not an indicator of whether they're capable of change. We're all capable of change, but whether it's a wonderful indicator on how do we want to communicate that change? How might that other person receive that change and process that change? Okay. There we go. the three assessments that I want to talk about is the workplace profile, the management profile, and the work of leaders profile. Olivia, I think you said you use DISC within a leadership program. Latoya, it sounds like maybe you're using workplace, but Monica and Carrie, what assessments or what programs are currently being run in your company, if any of them? Okay, workplace, Carrie, great, thank you.
I am using workplace and the management profile. I'm using
Okay.
both.
Okay. Workplace and management. Okay. And Olivia, in your leadership program, do you use the work of leaders profile at all?
We do not use work of leaders, no.
Okay. Okay. Is anybody familiar with work of leaders? Okay. I love work of leaders, and especially when we're talking about, and the statistics show that usually it's that top leadership, of course, that drives the change. And when we think about how are we equipping those leaders to say, okay, how do I need to communicate this change top down? We understand that leaders don't necessarily, they're not going to be out on the floor, so to speak, driving the change or talking about the change to the direct reports, some of those downlines. But being able to communicate it clearly to the folks that that person needs to communicate it to, and then how to encourage their downlines to communicate it down, I think becomes very, very important. The work of leaders profile, and let me see if I can get it pulled up here. The work of leaders profile, it's a little bit different than the workplace and the management as it explores three elements of leadership. How am I crafting a vision? How am I aligning that vision? And then how am I going to execute that vision? And it's those three leadership elements are based on one's DISC style. So when I'm crafting a vision, so for me, I love big, bold ideas. And usually I start from the top and I work my way back. But if you've got a leader that is a different style, they may do it completely different. They may love to get into the weeds, the details. How are we going to do this? No leadership style is better than the other in terms of crafting a vision. It's then how do I align everyone to it, right? So if I'm pulling a lot of energy from my I style, as I mentioned before, when I'm talking to about change with Alicia, I'm talking about the big, bold idea. And she needs more of that. Okay, that's great. That's where you want to get to, but I need so much more. How am I going to get there? How are you going to get us there? So understanding how am I going to align everybody to it? So do I need to talk a little bit differently? Do I need to, and Alicia, will you pull up the work of leaders? I'm having some issues getting it pulled up. Thank you. How do I align everybody to that vision? Because maybe another person that's a similar style to me, they're going to be like, oh, great. And they're going to jump in with both feet. But somebody else, an opposite style of me, maybe like, ooh, wait a minute. I don't know if I'm going to jump in that or get on that plane with you, right? Because I don't know if you're going to crash it. So, and then how am I going to execute it? So then it goes to how am I going to communicate this? How am I going to get everybody, how am I going to be successful with this change management or with this change? So work of leaders, it's a different profile than the workplace and the management, but when it comes to leadership and giving them another tool in which to initiate successfully those changes, this might be the one to take a peek at. And Lish, if you want to share that, I will stop sharing.
And I also put it in the comments for everyone to look at.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you. You know what? I'll just open up I'll open up the sample. Okay. And let me share. This is one of my, in terms of leadership, this is one of my go-to assessments. Okay. Take a peek. Okay. So it still gives you their disc style. So the leader will, and you can convert this if they've already taken a management or workplace, it can be converted, but based on their disc style, okay. You've got your shading and priorities, and then here are those three leadership elements: vision, alignment, and execution. So in each of those three elements, there's three additional elements: crafting a vision, exploration, boldness, and testing assumptions. So those three elements go into crafting a vision based on the way they've answered their work of leaders assessment. How open are they? Where are they in terms of exploration? How bold might they be? And then how are they going to test out those assumptions? In building alignment, that clarity, dialogue, and inspiration. And then championing execution, momentum, structure, and then feedback. Okay. And then it goes into what is a vision? And then where am I on the graphs? Am I going to remain open and open to ideas, or am I going to seek closure? Okay. Am I going to prioritize the big picture, prioritize those details? Okay. So when we're talking about change management, facilitating change management, giving the leaders tools to help them not only create change management, but how do we communicate it down? How do we initiate it? This might be a really great assessment to help them. Okay. I usually don't use the work of leaders in some of those emerging leader programs, but this may be one if you are creating an emerging leadership program, or if you're currently using an emerging leadership, this might be a great assessment to use with them. Okay. Any questions? And I know this was a really quick overview of the work of leaders. And if you want to take it so you guys can experience it yourself, let us know, because we will send you out a free access code. Okay. All right.
Can we get like pricing and stuff, the information on it, if it's different, like I know the number of credits or whatever, I don't know if it's different than the workplace, so that would be helpful.
Yep, it is. It is the same credit pricing as the management profile. Okay, and we will send that out in our follow-up email. Okay, but I do love the work of leaders. It's a higher level. It takes that individual more into those leadership principles, which is, the next level after you get them through the workplace and the management. So based on the way I like to interact and communicate, how am I with these additional three leadership principles: vision, alignment, and execution? Okay. So then the next one, so that's tip top. Then we go down to the management profile. It sounds like most of you, if not all of you, are very familiar with the management profile. That can help them understand, okay, I know how to manage, I know how to lead based on my disc style. But when we talk about change management, that's an additional element that they have to do. That's even more than just their daily tasks as a manager or as that leader. So understanding if we've got big changes, those transformational changes, how do I make sure as their manager that everybody's included? Even if the leadership isn't doing it, it could be my job then to make everybody as comfortable as I can with this big change that's coming up. That can help them create strategies for each of their employees. So, and LaToya, I think you shared that, it's hard to encompass all of the styles when you're communicating, via email or that organizational communication. But the folks that are in the trenches every day, this would be an excellent time for them to say, okay, how am I going to create this space for each of my direct reports, for each of my colleagues, to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible with the change. And that management profile can help them, I think, understand not only their employees, but, how do I motivate them to get through this change? Okay. For those of you that use the management profile, how do you use it? And I know that that's it could come across as a very vague question, but when you're using the management profile, do you talk about change management when they have to deal with change management or when they have to communicate change management? Do you use some of the knowledge that they can gain within that management profile? Do you help them kind of transfer that to that specific management task?
I will unmute again.
Yeah.
We use it in two different ways. So we have a supervisory management program that we do each semester, and the first session is this style. And that is what we use the management for. So we kind of use that one to kind of help them understand. We use that at the very beginning to help them connect together and kind of get them set up for how the rest of the program, it's a 6-week program, how that is going to be. Then the next way we use it is we do leadership trainings where they're requesting like their leadership to do this. So instead of using workplace, we use management style. We don't talk as much about change in either one of those.
Okay. I do think that this can help when they're working or they're helping their team through change. So it may be something to think about when you're creating that curriculum, to say, okay, even if it's just a little piece of it, but change management, can come up so quickly. And then, especially when you're looking at the adaptive changes, not the transformational change, but sometimes the transformational change that really is where you need to rely on that communication, right? Because one, you don't want to lose that employee. You don't want to lose that team member. And two, you're trying to make this change as comfortable as possible. Not easy, but as smooth as you can. So having a communication tool such as DISC and then having it apply them to that specific task might be something to think about. I know that again, when we're going through change management here at Resources, that's something that's become top of mind. Not that it's always been, but it definitely has as we're working through some bigger changes. And especially if we're bringing a new product in, or we're getting rid of a product, or we're restructuring some different departments, making sure that we're using that knowledge of the way different styles communicate and interact, it's made it a little bit easier. Okay. Do we have a deck for change management? No, but that is something that we can definitely help create for you, especially looking at the elements of different change management. So let's take that, and that is something that I can create and then send out to all of you guys if you're interested in that. It would be, a base deck, and then you can build or remove as you wanted or as you needed. The last assessment, and you guys are all familiar with the workplace, that just helps everybody, of course, the big self-awareness tool how am I going to be with change? And understanding, okay, if I'm on that southern part of the graph, change is going to be really hard for me. And these are certain elements that I need. And being able to communicate, you know, maybe, hey, this is what I'm missing. Can you help me gather this information or get this information? Or how do I advocate for myself? And you know, again, using a communication tool such as Workplace, it gives that awareness, and it continues to build that awareness. This is something that I need. How am I going to ask for it? And then understanding who you're asking it from and being able to articulate that in a way that you're going to get what you need. I think all three of those, in terms of change management and using DISC to help facilitate change management in any organization or any department or any team, will definitely help. Because ultimately, and let me take this off. Okay. Oh, I'm going to share my slide deck again. Possibly. Because ultimately, change management focuses on how to help people engage, adapt, and use a change in their day-to-day work. DISC itself is not a be-all, end-all, but it can certainly help people engage, adopt, and use and embrace the change that's coming down the way, whether or not we like it or not. Okay. All right. Any questions about the assessments, about change management? This was just a really high level overview of how you may use some of the DISC assessments to facilitate change or to help your colleagues facilitate change. Anybody? Okay.
So would you, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, Latoya.
I'm not a C style, but I needed time to process.
Yeah, that's all right.
So would you recommend if we were to do a change style training that they can go ahead and still do the management one, or you recommend the leaders one?
Any of the assessments are going to be great when you're talking about bringing focus on how do I initiate and then that change, and then how do I get everybody through it kind of effectively and as positively as possible. I think when you're thinking about using this management, absolutely, because then you can still say, okay, when I'm communicating change, how am I going to do this? How am I going to create space for everybody in terms of change? Because that's a whole different ball game when you have to help your team through change versus just your day-to-day tasks of managing. So even if you use management, and I don't want to say just use management, but if you choose to use management and not do that work of leaders assessment, absolutely, because you can still have those conversations about, okay, how are we going to initiate change? How are we going to make that S style feel comfortable with the change? Or how are we going to get them comfortable with the change? What will the C's need? And how will I provide that to them? How will I invite that conversation? And then the D's and the I's, how do I maybe slow them down a little bit or make sure that they're picking up everything that they need to pick up? Detail, and this is me, but even though I'm an IS, sometimes I'll miss some of those details that I need. So then I got to go back and pick it up. So for an I, it's frustrating for me, even though I'm the one who did it, because now I got to slow down. So how do I make sure that I'm helping those I's pick up all of those details and make sure, okay, these are things that you really need to know if I'm a leader or a manager. So absolutely, Latoya, that management assessment and change management can, because a lot of times the managers, those mid-level managers, they're the ones that are really communicating and helping the organization through it. Okay. Any other questions or comments? And Alicia will get access codes for the work of leaders to everybody. I will work on a base slide deck connecting the disc to change management and get that to you guys. I know Olivia, you said you'd be interested in it. LaToya, absolutely. Carrie, if you're interested in it, let me know.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I said, me too.
Oh, okay. I'm
too.
sorry, I didn't catch
That's okay.
that. Absolutely. And then feel free to ask questions, you know, what's this? What's this? How do I do this? And it will be more general. So then you can build in. So if you're using workplace or you're using management, or you decide to use work of leaders, it won't be assessment specific. Okay. All right, I'm going to give you guys back a few minutes of your day, but thank you for joining me and Alicia. If you have any questions after, feel free to reach out to myself, to Alicia, and we'll get back to you right away.
And I'll be sure to send a follow-up email and all of our upcoming events, so that way you guys can register for those if you would like to.
All right, guys, thank you. Oh. I think who